보니 패소백짤 2 뭔가 나온 것 같다. 지금 희대의 스트레스 게임 탈모 게임이다. 일단 게임이 너무 복잡해갖고 이거 다시 하게 될지 모르겠는데 한번 살펴봅시다. 뭐가 바뀌었나.
Over the ages, we have known pain like
아이 아파요.
what we endured, and we became.
부채다. 어이 부채같이 생겼다 맞지? 근데 사실 제가 이 게임은 예전에 이 느꼈던 단점이 뭐였냐면 일단 이 게임을 제일 처음 시작할 땐 진짜 개재밌지 않습니까? 그래서 이제 이 게임으로 몇 달은 가겠다 막 이렇게 씹다가도 이 나중에 새로운 빌드 키우려면 진짜 무슨 이 군대 재입대하는 그런 기분 알지? 거기다 좀 쉬었다 다시 돌아와 보면 게임이 완전히 바뀌어있고 막 또 개발자들은 어떻게든 유저들 최대한으로 개빡치게 만들려고 막 너무 어렵고 이 복잡하게 만들다 보니까 저는 사실 어느 순간부터 다시 디아2 하고 있더라고요. 뭐 하드코어한 건 알겠는데 뭐 제가 게임을 하면서까지 탈모 오는 건 좀 별로라 가지고 하여튼 오늘 영상 보고 뭐 한 10번 정도 감탄사가 나오면 뭐 한번 해볼까 말까 한번 고민해봐야겠습니다. 야 나 옛날에 얘 아니다 내가 했는 거. 나 그때 화살 빌드 썼잖아. 그거 저 뭐고 냉동 오줌 빌드 같은 거 만들었잖아 내 그때. 이 비둘기 그때 내 개패던 앤데 와 다시 보니까 야 이거 역시 액션감은 이 RPG 게임 중에는 진짜 탑이긴 하다 맞지? 와 이거 다시 보니까 재밌겠네 이거. 이거 다시 한번 해볼까? 근데 또 레벨 1부터 다시 하려니 또 빡세긴 한데 뭐 얼마나 바뀌는지 일단 보자. 오 사장 생겼단다. 야 액트 4가 생겼다. 야 막간 세계장은 뭔데? 이거 완전 막장인데. 오 신규 지역이 35개면은 신규 보스도 24개나 나왔다. 야 이거 이 정도면은 게임 새로 나온 거 아닌가 이거? 와 잼도 생기고 대대적인 스킬도 있고 엔드게임지도 25개 신규 아이템 신규 주유 스킬 주유 스킬이고 오야 달리기도 생겼네. 오야 신규 거래 시스템. 와 망했다 이 게임 이제 끝났다. 야 이제 하지 말자 뻥이고 또 뭔데 이 신규 또 뭔가 신규 컨텐츠 뭐 나왔네 봐라. 와 Rise of the Episode. 우와 뭐하는 건데 이게 던전 같은 거 나왔네. 와 이거 우리 타이탄 퀘스트 할 때가 아니었는데 뻥이고 타이탄 퀘스트는 나중에 또 엄청 묵혀놓으면 개재밌어질 거다. 일단 그거 묵힐 동안 이것도 하면 되겠네. 또 한번 또 페인 한번 대봐야겠네. 큰일났다네. 하여튼 여러분 제가 지금 조금 살짝 확인해보고 왔는데 이제 액트 4가 완전 새롭게 추가돼서 가루이 군도에서 이 고대 무기를 찾는 여정이 펼쳐진다고 합니다. 섬들을 자유롭게 항해하면서 막 비선형 진행이 가능하대요. 그리고 기존의 이 크루얼 난이도는 제거가 되고 3개의 인터루드 액트라는 게 뭐가 추가가 됐다는데 이게 아까 말했던 그 막간 3장 막장인갑다 맞지? 근데 야 이 인터루드 액트가 나중에 액트 5가 구현되면 제거될 예정이란다. 그러면 야 액트 5도 나중에 나오나 보네. 우와 이거 게임 큰일 났네 이거. 그리고 아까 Rise of the Abyssal이라는 이상한 뭐 신규 컨텐츠 뭐 한 게 나왔다 돼 있었잖아요. 이게 이제 그 무슨 어비설 파편을 막아내는 새로운 리그 메커니즘이 추가된 거래요. 어비설 보스랑 전투하면서 보상을 얻는 뭔가 이제 이 뭔지 모르겠다. 하여튼 이거는 한번 해봐야 알 것 같고 그 다음에 이제 아까 전에 거래 시스템 비동기 거래 시스템이랍니다. 이건 이제 패스 오브 엑자일 1편 때부터 이제 요청사항이 되게 많았던 건데 판매자가 온라인 상태가 아니더라도 플레이어가 이제 아이템을 구매할 수 있게 하는 그런 시스템이 추가가 됐대요. 대신에 막 경매장 같은 느낌은 아닌 것 같네. 뭐냐면 이게 자신의 개인 상점을 숨겨진 공간에 설정하고 거기서 가격을 지정해서 판매할 수 있다 돼 있습니다. 그럼 이거 옛날에 나이트 온라인 같은 거에서 그치 돗자리 펴갖고 파는 그런 거 말하는가 보다. 아니 근데 개인 상점을 왜 숨겨진 공간에 하는데 그럼 누가 와서 사가는데 맞지? 이거 뭐고 이게? 다음에 이동성 개선. 아까 전에 질주 기능 생겼다 했잖아요. 이제 회피 버튼을 길게 누르면 지속적으로 달릴 수 있는 스프린트 기능이 이 모든 클래스에 도입된다고 합니다. 대신에 이게 피격 시에는 쓰러지기 때문에 전략적으로 사용이 필요하대요. 와 이런 거 어쨌든 스프린트 추가가 된 것만 해도 개쩐다. 왜냐면 맵이 개 크잖아요. 이거 노가다 개쩔잖아. 난 이것만 해도 일단 10점 플러스다. 그 다음에 지원 우리 그 서포트 잼 시스템도 뭔가 바뀌었네. 이제 같은 서포트 잼을 이 여러 개씩 사용할 수 있대요. 이게 뭔 말인데 말이 되나 이게? 이거 내 잘못 알고 있나? 같은 지원 보석을 여러 개 사용할 수 있다는 게 뭔 말인데? 야 그러면 이중 타격이 2개가 껴져 있으면 4중 타격 되나? 아니네. 그러니까 이게 이중 타격을 예전에는 뭐 하나 액티브 잼 한 개 박으면 다른 액티브 잼에 못 썼잖아요. 근데 이걸 이제 다른 액티브 잼에도 다 쓸 수 있게 해준다 이 말이네. 나는 또 한 개에다가 다 몇 개씩 박을 수 있는 줄 알았다. 그러면 게임 바로 망했겠지. 너무 세져갖고 캐릭터가. 오케이, 일단 이것도 개합격. 이제 그러고 이제 아까 전에 뭐고 그 밸런스 조정도 있었다 했죠. 어센던시에 캐릭터 이제 그러니까 클래스랑 전직 클래스 모든 전반에 걸친 밸런스 조정이 있었대요. 스킬이랑 뭐 패시브 트리 전부 다 이제 개선이 이루어진 거지. 특히 패시브 노드가 이제 150개가 더 추가가 됐다더라. 150개가 추가가 된 거면요, 와, 이쪽 개발사 잠 안 자나? 내랑 비슷한 인생인갑다. 그리고 이 제작 시스템도 대대적으로 개편돼서 저번보다 훨씬 자유도 높고 효율성 있게 제작을 할 수 있게 만들었대요. 자, 그리고 이제 이 엔드게임 컨텐츠 확장도 있다. 25개의 새로운 엔드게임 맵이 나온 거다. 아니 25개의 새로운 엔드게임 맵이 나온 거면은 이거 타이탄 퀘스트 전체 분량 지금 나온 거보다 더 많이 나온 거 아이가? 근데 진짜 이건 진짜 솔직한 마음인데 이 사이즈가 너무 또 커졌다니까 또 안 하고 싶다네. 너무 빡셀 것 같은데. 그다음에 기타 변경 사항으로 보니까 새로운 유니크 아이템이 다수 추가가 됐고 카루이 문화 테마 기반의 이 신규 기본템들도 막 등장을 한대요. 하여튼 제가 이 바쁜 분들을 위해서 좀 요약해서 설명을 한다고 많은 부분이 놓쳐졌을 수 있는데 사실 이 조나단 아저씨인가 그분이 이 설명을 진짜로 잘 해놨거든요. 갖고 지금부터 그 영상을 한번 보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 하여튼 바쁘신 분들은 딱 요 정도 보면 될 거고 더 깊이 알고 싶다 하시는 분들은 이 뒤에 나오는 영상 보시면 완벽하게 이해가 될 겁니다. 지금 제가 소개한 거는 진짜 빙산의 일각이에요. 그럼 바로 시작해 볼게요.
Now, as you can see, there's a lot going on, and we have a lot to reveal today. We'll start by going over Act 4, the next chapter in the Path of Exile 2 storyline. But that's not all. There's also 3 new interlude acts to get you to endgame, which means we're removing Cruel difficulty too. After that, we'll be going through the massive changes to characters. I'm super excited to show you how I've overhauled the entire support gem system, added new skills, and yes, there are buffs. Next, we'll go over the Rise of the Abyssal, this season's exclusive league mechanic, and talk about the new rewards, crafting systems, areas, and bosses that it adds. After that, it's on to changes we're making to the endgame. Then it's time to talk about items, crafting, and oh yeah, trade. That's going to be a big one. We'll then go over our new supporter packs and finish up with a live Q&A session where Ziggy D will ask Path of Exile 2's game directors, myself and Mark, your questions from Twitch chat. And after that, at 4 PM Pacific, patch notes. They're not quite complete, but they should give you some nice details to chew on. We've got a lot to cover today, but first, another announcement. When the third edict launches on the 29th, we'll be having a free weekend for Path of Exile 2. That's right, Path of Exile 2 will be free for the first time without requiring an early access key. The free weekend will end on September the 1st, so you'll have plenty of time to give the game a try. Alright, let's get started with Act 4. The story continues from the end of Act 3. Doryani has agreed to help you find an ancient weapon that can be used against corruption, the instrument of the Third Edict. The weapon was broken in ages past, but he believes that the pieces may be found in the Karui Archipelago, the home of the Karui tribes. You will need to journey to Kingsmarch, hire a ship, and set sail. When you open the map, you can choose to sail anywhere you like. Act 4 is completely non-linear, and you can visit the islands in any order you choose. Will you visit the pristine beaches of Whakapanu Island? The Karui whisper of a curse that afflicts all who travel there. Perhaps it's related to the weapon you seek. Or maybe you will visit the volcanic shores of the Isle of Kin. The Kin have been more restless recently, mining for sulfite and driven by some dark force. Perhaps you will choose to consult with one of the local Karui tribes. Their ancient wisdom could hold clues to finding the Third Edict. No matter where you choose to go, you will fight dangerous beasts, find fabulous treasures, and battle incredible bosses.
A challenger! Come, Yama sees your soul!
There are 8 islands to discover, each teeming with its own flora and fauna. Act 4 contains over 100 new monster types, 16 new areas, 12 new bosses, and plenty of other interesting encounters. There's a huge amount to show, but we're not going to spoil too much here. We want to give you a chance to discover it all for yourself. But what happens after Act 4? Well, until now you had to repeat the entire campaign again before you could face the endgame. But after adding Act 4, the game is far too long to make you do that. We needed something else to do in between the end of Act 4 and the endgame. So what else could we do? Add 3 new mini-acts, of course, and we're calling them the Interludes. The Interludes are a set of 3 temporary side stories that will be included in the game until Act 5 is released, that will take you to level 65 where the endgame can begin. The first interlude sends you on a journey back to Ogham. Renly has been leading the efforts to rebuild Ogham Village after the defeat of Count Geonor, but there's a new danger afoot. The nearby town of Halton is surrounded by an impenetrable darkness, and each night their corrupted townfolk emerge to raid the local farmlands. You will discover new areas and new bosses. You'll need to find your way through the darkness, uncover the source of corruption,
Soon you will serve our master.
and defeat it.
Yes, I shall dance with their corpse.
And that's just the first interlude. The second interlude will have you return to the Vasteri Desert, where Asala has been given a sacred duty. When the skies align, the gifting of water requires a chosen Sekima to meet with the Selkari, guardians of the sacred water, but they're nowhere to be found. You will need to track down the Selkari, find those responsible for disrupting the gifting, fight even more new bosses, discover the secrets of the ancient ritual, discover new locations, and ultimately help Asala carry out her sacred duty. Now for Interlude 3. As Royal Thaumaturge of the Vaal, Doryani had plans within plans to save his people from the cataclysm perpetuated by Etzeri's lust for power. One such plan involved sealing a group of willing Vaal deep in a great mountain vault near the home of the Asmeri, deep enough to survive the cataclysm. Even though thousands of years have passed, he believes that their descendants may still live, and may be key to defeating the beast. The journey up the mountain will be dangerous. New foes stand in your way. And the further up the mountain you venture, the colder it will become. Explore caves of ice and enter the vault itself. Who can say what you will find within? The interludes are 6 to 7 areas each and generally include 4 boss fights as well. When you put that together with Act 4, that adds up to 35 new areas in the campaign and 24 new bosses. It's worth making clear that the interludes are temporary. When Act 5 and 6 are added, the interludes will be going away. These are side stories after all, but don't worry, the bosses and areas that make up the interlude are all part of the endgame. We're not just going to throw them away. And with that, we don't need cruel difficulty anymore. We do know that it was a pretty big chore to have to play through the campaign multiple times on each character, and this was a huge reason that the campaign could feel like a bit of a slog when playing through again. But we do also have another new feature to address that particular concern as well. So let's talk about sprinting. In 030, when you hold down the dodge roll button, your character will go into a sprint after they finish the roll. This is available on all character classes, and there's no limitation on how long you can sprint for. The primary purpose of this feature is to make navigating areas faster when out of combat. Because of that, if you do take a hit while sprinting, you'll fall to the ground. The best idea is to use a skill when you see monsters. That'll break you out of the sprint so you can engage with no danger. If you do need to run away from monsters, just hold spacebar. You won't be vulnerable during the roll, and you're faster while sprinting than basically any monster in the game, allowing you to retreat from combat. Sprint is a pretty significant change to PoE 2's gameplay. But what I like most about it is that we can accelerate the pace of the game for those who want that, without having to compromise on PoE 2's more visceral combat systems. Okay, so that's the new extensions to the campaign, but there's a whole giant league to play through as well. I'll leave that to Mark to talk about later. And that's because what I want to talk about now is the new stuff for your characters. And probably one of the biggest new systems here is with the support gems. Now, support gems are one of the most interesting elements to creating a build. They're what enables so many interesting mechanics and different ways to play. But PoE 2's support gem system has just never been quite right. One of the major issues is the limitation of only having one support gem of each type on your character. We didn't want builds to just become using the same 5 most powerful supports in every skill. The problem with this design, though, is that it's actually working against using multiple skills in your build. If you can only use each support gem on one skill, it means that you're encouraged to go all in on that one ability. And we want to encourage you to combo your abilities, something needed to change. So with that in mind, we've removed the restriction of having one of each support gem per character. You can now use as many copies as you like. This should drastically increase the amount of possible builds and increase the amount of skill diversity. There are a lot of potential builds that suffered from the previous restriction. For example, a poison build previously couldn't add poison to more than one skill. They couldn't use stacking poison on more than one skill either. This severely limited your ability to combo with anything outside of the specifically designed poison archetype, but now you can. Many utility skills previously couldn't scale to endgame, because the supports that would make them scale were more useful to use in other skills. You would never speed up killing Palm with martial tempo, when you would much rather use it on your primary skill instead. There are more examples like this all over the place. In addition to that though, we thought there wasn't enough feeling of progression in the supports as you went through the game. There were only 3 tiers of supports, and many of the most important ones were given out at tier 1. Also, there were no strict upgrades, meaning that upgrading supports when you ran out of sockets required quite a lot of thinking. In order to solve these issues, we now also have multiple levels of many supports as you go through the game. For example, double barrel support gives you an extra bolt, but at the cost of 30% less reload speed. At tier 2, the penalty gets lowered to 20%. But then at tier 3, the support gem gets something new. It now reloads automatically when you heavy stun an enemy. In some cases, the highest tiers might work a little differently, and you'll have to decide if you like the upgrade or not, depending on your build. For example, rapid casting. The first couple of levels gives 15, then 20% increased cast speed. But then at tier 3, it changes to a new approach. For each different spell you cast in the last 8 seconds, you get 10% increased cast speed, which could be a pretty big bonus if you use a lot of different spells. So that's pretty good for upgrades through the campaign, but we wanted to add a little more spice to the endgame for supports too. And that's where our new system, Lineage Supports, comes in. You can think of these like unique items, but for supports. There are supports that are only available at endgame, but they're much more powerful. Like Ratha's Assault. It's an upgraded version of Double Barrel that reloads your skill as you dodge roll, as well as increasing the number of bolts it can hold. But it does mean that it's the only way you can reload the skill now. Now, unlike regular supports, you can't find these through the uncut support gem. Just like unique items, many of these can be found from specific bosses. And there's a ton in the regular drop pool too. Some of them are fairly rare, others fairly common. Some of them are build defining, others are just straight up power upgrades. All in all, there's around 40 lineage supports being added throughout the endgame, so there's a lot of power to find out there. Now, the new support gems are certainly going to open up a lot of builds, but of course we have a huge range of improvements to individual character classes as well. As well as adding new skills, we had a big focus on buffing existing skills so that they can scale well into the endgame. There's a huge amount to cover here, so we're not going to discuss everything. We're just going to quick fire through some of the coolest changes. We wanted to make cold a more useful element on the Ranger, so we've expanded the cold tools available. As well as increasing its range, Escape Shot now creates fragments of ice whenever it hits the ground. These fragments explode after a short time, making the skill better for killing groups of enemies. But not only that, we added an ice fragment support that creates more of them when killing frozen enemies. And a new buff skill called Ice Tip Arrows that allows all your arrows to create ice fragments. This already gives clear to rangers wanting to use ice, but to take further advantage of the ice fragments, Freezing Salvo has been upgraded to shoot additional cold arrows towards every fragment, giving you a nuke-like ability.
As you just saw, even though there are major changes to the campaign for this update, we want to make sure that every time you come back for an expansion, each area feels different with something extra going on. It is really important to make sure your experience when returning between expansions is fresh and filled with new content, and the way we did this was through leagues. Every expansion we make has a league, which not only has a fresh economy, but also has new content exclusively available in that league. So, let's delve into the details of what Path of Exile 2's first official league is bringing to the table. The Abyssal are a race that have mastery of forbidden magics and necromancy. They were thought to be extinct, but have merely been biding their time underground. You first encounter signs of the Abyssal in Clairfell, where you discover that during the night, weaker members of the Undead Legion have been attacking the encampment. The townsfolk require your help to investigate where the monsters are coming from and put a stop to their attacks.
Out there, ancient creatures, lurking beneath the surface.
As you proceed through Rayclast, you'll find fissures in the earth connected to larger pits. The monsters normally inhabiting the area are being affected by it, harmed by it even, having their souls eaten to strengthen the abyssal underground. As you defeat the monsters, the fissure closes and abyssal emerge, angered by you killing their food. Once all those fissures have been sealed, the pit activates, and more abyssal pour out. This is where the larger and more dangerous monsters reveal themselves, as hordes of abyssal spew out from the pit to take your soul. If you kill a magic pack, then magic abyssal arise. If you kill a rare, then a rare monster will emerge from the pit, having absorbed some or all of its modifiers for itself. This means the monsters emerging will generally be more difficult and more rewarding, as each modifier gives better rewards. If you are able to kill them all, the pit will seal shut. As each pit is closed, it reveals a potential reward. Abyssal troves will rise up out of the pits, allowing you to get some epic loot. Areas often contain many pits, with many fissures, and the amount goes up as you progress through the game, getting more intense. It doesn't stop there. When monster mods are absorbed, they have a chance to become infused with the Dark Necromancy, transforming them into abyssal modifiers. For example, you defeat this monster with the Mana Siphoner modifier. Their soul is eaten by the pit, and a rare monster emerges. The Mana Siphoner modifier has transformed into Soul Siphoner, and is now amplified in danger and reward. Abyssal pits also interact with other monsters and mechanics. If you defeat a rogue exile that's near one, it'll be revived as a Lichborn that has multiple abyssal modifiers. Lichborn exiles even have their own unique jewel they can drop, if you are lucky enough to encounter and kill them. If an abyss spawns near a boss, killing it will summon a gigantic Giga Larvae creature. Monsters imprisoned in essences near abyssal pits are affected by the abyss too. They will come with an additional new essence item that can be used to craft your items. So, that's your bread and butter of the Abyssal League. Kill surface-dwelling monsters, kill the emerging abyssal, close the fissures, overcome pit encounters, and reap the rewards. There's a lot more to this league, however. As you complete abysses, you can find ancient pieces of bone, preserved from the remains of fallen Lichborn. These are one of the many rewards for your mission to seal the pits. You can use this on a rare item to imbue it with abyssal magic, adding a special hidden modifier to your item. But how do you reveal it? In Act 2 of the campaign, you'll encounter a new area. This area is overrun by the Abyssal and the Lost Men. After clearing through this area, you'll find the Well of Souls, a giant cavity with a massive vortex of souls swirling beneath you. So how do you reveal the mods on your abyssal-infused items? Obviously, just throw them in, right? Yes, that's exactly what you do. Before throwing it in, you are given the option of how you want to transform it, in the form of a choice of 3 different modifiers. Once you've chosen your desired mod, throw it in, where it will absorb the power of the souls, and the ominous creature will then retrieve it for you. These modifiers can be ones from the core mod pool, all the way through to specialized modifiers that cannot normally appear on items. During the campaign, you can use it as a way to more easily add useful existing mods, but during the endgame, there is a whole set of new and powerful mods you can add to your items. Like this mod for crossbows, that allows you to place an additional ballista totem. Or this one that adds spirit to your staff. Or this one that allows you to generate more combo with your quarterstaff skills. And speaking of endgame, you can also use the system to craft waystones. With a preserved vertebrae fused into your waystones, you can get some new modifiers that push difficulty and rewards to new heights. Here are some examples of those mods. You always get a choice of 3, so you can avoid anything you don't think your character is capable of. With this modifier, the natural inhabitants of the area are all spawned near abysses, and there are up to 9 additional abyssal pits in the area, making it just a full-on abyss ruckus. Or this one, which causes the final abyssal pit in the area to always result in a boss encounter, be it either one underground or one that emerges out. There are dozens of these waystone modifiers in total you can get from this crafting. That covers the new crafting mechanic. So what's left? Well, we talked about how when closing pits you can get abyssal troves, but sometimes when closing an abyss, you'll reveal an underground cavern that leads to the abyssal depths. After jumping into the depths, you'll find an abyssal city, swarming with legions of the undead. When underground, every single rare abyssal enemy will have an abyssal modifier. And at the end of the dungeon, you'll even find a rare with a more powerful Lichborn modifier. Once you're able to defeat this powerful rare, you can also find some nice rewards. Aside from the entire area being valuable due to the abyssal modifiers on the monsters, it has its own specific drops too. One example is a set of lineage supports that can rarely be found in these depths, like Kurgel's Leash. This support empowers both you and your minions when you command them, granting unholy might to you both. Another depth-specific outcome is a set of omen-like items that amplify your abyssal crafting. Additionally, we're adding some new socketables that can drop from the abyssal depths. Take Ulaman's Gaze, which can be socketed into your armor. These are a bit special in that you can only have one equipped at a time, but give some pretty powerful effects. Think of them as almost a unique socketable for your equipment. In the endgame, where you can still find depths, you also start to find a different type of underground chamber. In these areas, you'll find an ancient spire, a device being used by commanders of the abyssal factions to plunge Rayclast into a lightless void. Your goal is simple: kill this commander and destroy the spire. There are 4 bosses in the Abyss League, and there are some pretty cool uniques available from them. An example is this belt, Darkness Enthroned. It has 2 sockets, but hold on, socketables don't work on belts. Well, this belt has a special mod that allows it to count as a different slot for the purpose of socketables. This one, for example, counts as a helmet. I kind of want one that counts as a body armor. I wonder how rare that one is. You can also find this unique jewel, Undying Hate. This jewel transforms part of your passive skill tree into an abyssal version, and has multiple depths. The deeper it goes, the more of your passive tree is affected, allowing you to fulfill your fantasy of becoming part Abyssal Lich. Now, the last thing that Abyssal Commanders can drop is a Finger of the Lich. But what use do you have with a random undead finger? Well, the next time you return to the Well of Souls, with the finger in your inventory, your character will almost feel compelled. To do what though, you might ask? To jump in. The items you threw in came back more powerful, right? So what's the worst that could happen? Well, you will just have to find that one out for yourself. Along with the introduction of Act 4 and the interlude, we will be adding 25 new endgame maps. These maps will contain all the new monsters and bosses we're adding, improving variety and giving you opportunities to experience the new boss fights many times. Let's take a look at some examples. Rock Pools is a map where you explore a shallow rocky coastline, surrounded by coral and filled with sirens. At the end is a giant Goblin King boss, ready to eat sulfite and squish you like a bug. Holton is an Ezomite township which has seen better days. Explore and clear the township to find a gothic, Reaper-like boss, with the ability to manipulate storms and fry you with both lightning and wither you with chaos. Given some of the new bosses added are a bit more epic, such as the Act boss and final bosses of each interlude part, it would be a bit of a waste to just use them as regular map bosses. Instead, we'll be adding some new mechanics to the Atlas that use them. These start appearing pretty fast into the endgame and will help bridge the gap until you do your pinnacle bosses. In the desert biome, you can encounter a wild sandstorm. 3 maps around the sandstorm contain a device you must activate. Upon doing this, the sandstorm's magic is disrupted, revealing the map inside and allowing you to access it and find the cause. This presents itself in the form of a boss, similar to the existing Citadel bosses. This boss is a Farad'n Swordmaster, who has been blessed with the power of a time gem, allowing him to take his swordsmanship to the next level by replicating himself, maneuvering rapidly, and severing the fabric of time itself with his powerful slashes. In the water biome, you'll encounter a giant maelstrom, where one of the maps surrounding the water biome connects to it, but the connection is obscured. You must run the maps nearby, hoping to find a beacon, which will remove the maelstrom and reveal the connection to that map. Another example is this Vaal vault in the mountain biome. But how do we get inside? Running the adjacent maps to it will yield a key, which you can then use to gain access to this vault. Or, you could just trade for one, I guess. Use the key to dispel the powerful force field surrounding it, leading to the Vaal Elite and their rewards inside. These all contain Uber versions of the Act 4 boss, and the bosses at the end of each part of the interlude. And each have their own exclusive drop pool of new lineage supports, which, as Jonathan spoke about earlier, are powerful support gems that modify your skills in pretty crazy ways. As an example of a lineage support which can come from the Farad'n Swordmaster mentioned earlier, we have Garo-Khan's Resolve, which causes your critical strikes to fork, but requires some mobility on your part to properly enable. From the boss sealed in the Vaal Vault, we have Paquate's Pact, which supports your war cries, causing them to inflict massive amounts of corrupted blood at the cost of your own life. Additionally, some maps can now spawn summoning circles, a room resembling an Ezomite henge. Activating this henge will spawn bosses. It's as simple as that. We'll also be making changes to how affixes and waystones work, as the current prefixes equals good, suffixes equals bad iteration isn't quite hitting the mark. We tried something new here in Path of Exile 2, but after seeing the feedback we decided we actually liked what we had in Path of Exile 1 more. Like Path of Exile 1, each affix will now be both difficult and rewarding. Waystone mods now grant an increase to the number of waystones dropped, and an additional specific upside attached to it. This means as you roll your map, they will continue to get more difficult and more rewarding, and allow you to customize the difficulty and rewards of your maps better. For example, the Frostbitten mod, which causes enemies to deal cold damage, also increases the rarity of items dropped as its upside, whereas the Of Venom suffix modifier, which causes enemies to poison on hit, has the upside of granting increased pack size. Some maps will end up having a lot of rarity, some a lot of pack size, and others will just have a mixture of everything. Due to now having more modifiers granting difficulty, we will of course be reducing the difficulty per modifier to account for this. So, that's your Atlas, maps, and waystones, but what about Breach, Ritual, Pinnacle content, and others of the sort? We're making some changes around this too. The first change is that you'll now be able to invest 2 points into your specific League Atlas trees before having to run the Pinnacle content. There will be a specific objective for each type of content which grants you those points. For example, in the case of Delirium, it's simple. You just need to find and kill one of the bosses in a map, Omniphobia or Kosas. The rest of the points for each content come from the Pinnacle content, but we're making some changes to accessibility here too. Currently, access to most Pinnacle content requires the same key at the easiest and most difficult version of the content. This creates a negative feeling where at lower difficulties, instead of wanting to run the content, you're often better off just selling it to someone who can run it at maximum difficulty. To address this, each content will now drop splinters, which will not form into singular items, Instead of using the singular, combined item in the Realm Gate, you can now just bring your splinters. Upon inserting the splinters into the Realm Gate, an interface will appear, allowing you to pick your difficulty, and you'll notice each difficulty has a different entry cost. This means if you want to run easier difficulties, it costs less, which also allows you to run this content much sooner into the endgame. Because these encounters now just require splinters, their corresponding Atlas tree no longer affects the difficulty of them, and has been changed to purely affect the content and maps on the Atlas. The Arbiter of Ash works a bit differently. Instead of requiring splinters, he still needs crisis fragments. We now have only 2 difficulties of the Arbiter. The first, requiring the existing fragments obtained from citadels. The second, Uber Arbiter, requires Calamity fragments. These come from citadel bosses also, but only once you've allocated the maximum number of points in your boss Atlas tree, ensuring those citadels are at their highest difficulty level. Since we're talking about pinnacle content, we also felt that the leveling curve in the late game was a bit too steep. We've smoothed this out a bit so that it's easier to get to the mid-90s. We've also added some new in-game unique items. Let's take a look at a couple. Thunderfist is a pair of gloves that grants Crackling Palm, a skill which empowers your unarmed attacks, granting the ability to call down the storms themselves on enemies you hit. Put simply, literally every monster you hit with your unarmed skills will be struck by powerful lightning. Pair this with the aforementioned Hollow Palm technique to embrace your true unarmed prowess in combat. Another unique we're adding is Henekura's Sight. Equip this amulet to be granted the power of the Mother of Death herself. This is reflected by granting you a skill called Foresight. While you have Foresight, your dodge roll no longer avoids hits. But instead, being hit while dodge rolling restores you to full life and makes you unable to die for a brief period of time. You'll notice when this does occur, a copy of your character appears and takes the full damage. This is you seeing that future, as if you hadn't been wearing the amulet. Ultimately, your endgame experience should be more streamlined. With new content to find, you'll be able to invest in your Atlas trees sooner, engage with pinnacle content faster, have less FOMO running said pinnacle content, reach higher levels easier, and do all of that while finding many new chase endgame items. Talking about finding items is one thing, but what about crafting them? We've taken a step back and looked at some of our crafting systems to make some notable improvements. Let's start with essences, which suffered from an issue where the regular essences were effectively useless and didn't give players the tools or excitement that a crafting system should provide. To alleviate these concerns, essences are being changed in a few ways. Firstly, they're being changed to function like regals and add specific modifiers with specific values, meaning you know exactly what you're going to get. We found that players were often bottlenecked by regal orbs when crafting in the campaign, so this helps to fill that gap, allowing you to better upgrade your items. For example, this Lesser Essence of Flames, which will be able to add a flat amount of fire damage to your magic martial weapons. Secondly, we're adding many more tiers. That Lesser Essence of Flames, for example, has a regular variant and a greater variant too, adding even more fire damage with each upgrade. The intention of this is so that when you find one early on, you don't worry about holding onto it till later to use on a higher level item. You should feel free to use them as they come to get powerful upgrades during the campaign. Lastly, our highest tier of essences, now called Perfect Essences, will function like a Chaos Orb instead of a Regal. So it will replace one of the modifiers on your rare items with the specified mod. Such as this Perfect Essence of Flames. You'll notice this one doesn't just add flat fire damage like the ones before it. The Perfect Essences often give something a bit different, with some opportunities to be pretty damn powerful. There are many different essences, each with many tiers, covering many of the more core modifiers you'd want on items early on, through to chase specialized ones for endgame. Speaking of endgame, we really wanted to expand our crafting options for late endgame crafting projects. You might have noticed that at endgame, you get way too many transmutes. Wouldn't it be nice if some of those didn't drop? but instead you got something a little more powerful? At higher levels, you can now find Greater Orb of Transmutation and Perfect Orb of Transmutation. These can be used on normal items to upgrade them to magic, ensuring that the modifier generated is of a minimum level. This is similar to how you find higher tier items on the ground, but for crafting. These higher tiers will also exist for Orb of Augmentation, Regal Orb, Exalted Orb, and Chaos Orb, meaning you can get all of the orbs required to take your item from normal rarity to a fully completed rare with guaranteed high tier mods. On top of these new core crafting currencies, we wanted to make sure there are powerful crafting bases to use them on. Now in endgame, you can start to find exceptional items. These are items that drop at normal rarity and are perfect for your from-scratch crafting projects. They can come with extra quality, up to 30%, or an additional socket to use your crafting socketables in. And yes, they can be corrupted for yet another socket. You can also get exceptional unique items. To add even further to your crafting arsenal, we've added a whole suite of new omens to ritual content, and removed some of the more unimpactful ones that weren't being used. Some of the new omens include the Omen of the Ancients, which will cause your next Orb of Chance to not destroy the item, but generate a random unique of the same class. Or the Omen of Sanctification, which is my new favorite. This will cause your next Divine Orb used on a rare item to reroll the values of its modifiers, allowing it to exceed the normal minimum and maximum values, raising the ceiling on the new most powerful rare items in the game. This omen will also cause your item to become sanctified. Sanctified items cannot be crafted, just like corrupted ones, so consider carefully when you use this. Another is the Omen of Chaotic Monsters, which will cause your next Chaos Orb to reroll all modifiers on a Waystone, allowing you to fix your maps if you get some modifiers that are not feasible for your build. Besides these examples, there is a huge variety of new omens for you to discover in your ritual encounters. With the release of Act 4, notably taking place in the Karori Archipelago, you'll be able to now find a new currency item, Henikora's Lock. Henikora, the Karori goddess of death, has the power of foresight, and is able to see many futures, including the outcome of your next craft. So, imbuing her lock onto an item gives you that same power too. For example, you'll know whether or not to use an Exalted Orb on your item, as you will know exactly what the outcome is. So, with all these new crafting improvements, it's safe to say you're going to be making some epic items, and not necessarily just ones for yourself. So given that, it's time to talk about a massive one: trade. It's finally here, the moment we've all been waiting for. Fully asynchronous trade. Over the years, the way players trade with each other in Path of Exile 1 has morphed from using the forums, through to the in-game chat, all the way through to using the website. These systems, in all their iterations, work for a while, but with each iteration new problems eventually reveal themselves. Be it requiring you to be in your hideout too much instead of out there killing monsters, or never getting responses from people who are either AFK or just can't be bothered. In order to finally solve this, and this has been a long time coming, we're adding a new system that allows you to buy items from other players without requiring the seller to be present. They can continue farming, killing monsters, AFK as they please, and can even be offline. With the introduction of Kingsmarch in Act 4, you will encounter Ange, assistant to Rog in the Meridian Free Traders Company. Over the last 2 decades or so, since Path of Exile 1's storyline, Faustus has handed down his knowledge and expertise to Ange, and she is now ready to take over his business. If you have a hideout unlocked already, you can immediately invite her there. If you don't have a hideout yet, you will need to acquire one. You can do this by completing a quest to defeat one of the bosses inhabiting an island in Act 4, allowing you then to take a slice of it for yourself, making it your new home and base of operations. Once invited to your hideout, She will now serve as operating your currency exchange, but also serve as the figurehead in your new trading empire. So, how does this new system work? In the existing trade system, you would list items for sale in premium stash tabs. And then when someone wanted one, you'd have to take it out for yourself and trade it to them. Now, instead of using those, you can give your items to Ange so she can sell them for you. Each item must have a price set. The prices are set using in-game currency items, such as Exalted Orbs or Chaos Orbs. Once a price is set, other players will be able to find the item by searching for it on the trade website. Once a desired item has been found, you can hit a button, which will instantly teleport your character in-game to their hideout. Then, you can immediately purchase the item, and while there, if you want, browse their other goods, in case there's a good deal someone else hasn't yet discovered. You'll notice that as a buyer, on top of the currency the seller set for the price, it also costs gold to purchase an item, as Ange has bills to pay after all. As a seller, you'll immediately receive a notification when an item of yours is sold, and can also see an effect above Ange in your hideout when she has unclaimed currency. Just go talk to her, claim your currency, and continue playing at your leisure. As many people already acquired premium stash tabs for the purpose of the trade system, we wanted to add a way for you to convert your existing tabs to merchants tabs, if you want. You can do that here, on the website, but only if you purchase those tabs before the release of the third edict. To clarify, the existing trade system will remain fully intact, so your premium stash tabs will not lose any of their functionality. We just figured people might want to switch over to this new system. We expect a lot of feedback around this new system and are looking forward to trying it out with you. As we are not able to test internally with an entire, thriving economy, there will certainly be some kinks to work out. Based on how the system goes, we will be adding it to Path of Exile 1 when ready, so any of the tabs you purchase will also be usable there later. Next up, we're going to be talking about our new supporter